He's partied with celebrities and sports stars, rising to the top of one of the most famous strip club empires worth millions.
Was he scared to death? Oh, he was definitely scared to death.
Scared to death because he's also the point man on an inside job.
They heard me on that tape anytime. That's a conspiracy to murder, eh?
That would bring down some of the most notorious mafia figures of all time.
So when you took John Gotti, you basically decapitated the family.
Who is he? You'd never know by looking at him.
I'm defenseless. I'm not a tough guy. I mean, if somebody wants to come after me, they'll get me.
For a guy who rubbed elbows with VIPs of the underworld, Michael Bluetrick started much smaller, as a partner in a politically connected law firm.
I was not happy just being an attorney. I always wanted to be doing something. I owned comedy clubs, I owned sporting goods stores. I was trying to find a niche for myself.
That niche is something revolutionary for Manhattan, a gentleman's club catering to New York's high society.
The only strip bars we had were the ones in 42nd Street with the blacked out stuff and the old ladies dancing and everything terrible, and nobody would go to that. No respectable person would go to that kind of club.
But Bluetrick has a vision. The club he'd call Scores would be the kind of place where lap dances are a respectable business.
I said, you know, this could really be something.
Who was your clientele?
Our clientele were the rich, famous, the top of America.
Sports figures.
Sports figures.
Entertainers.
Entertainers, movie stars, athletes from every sport in the world. There was no strata of superstar and famous person that did not come to Scores.
Shock jock Howard Stern talked about the club nearly every day on his national radio show.
We would get busloads of Japanese showing up and saying, is this the Scores that Howard Stern talks about?
Superstar Demi Moore even worked the floor, training for her role in the movie Striptease.
At the peak of things, how much money was Scores raking in a night?
I would say on a good week, in the peak of things, maybe $400,000.
$400,000 a week?
Yes.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
You got rich.
Yes, I went from a wealthy lawyer to a very rich man.
That kind of cash attracts a lot of attention. Sometimes the wrong kind.
I had a visit from someone who I knew was a mob affiliate, a very senior associate of the mob. And he sat me down and he said, listen, I hear that you have taken the old Club A space, and that's a very dangerous proposition that you've just gotten yourself into, because the Club A space, there are dibs on that space and that neighborhood from a couple of different families. And
Mob family.
Mob families.
And Bluetrick says those families made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
And if you don't make some sort of accommodation to those families, the place will be firebombed. And if the place still is open, we'll send people. They'll send people in there to fire guns into the floor and scare people and make everybody run away and make the police make the place very uncomfortable for people. And this is the life that you are choosing. Are you out of your mind?
It's a classic mob extortion racket, and the characters involved send shivers down the spine of the low-key lawyer.
This is the Gambino family.
Yes, this was the Gambino family.
John Gotti.
John Gotti's family, yes. John Gotti Sr. at that time.
How did you react to that?
I started sweating through my shirt.
Despite all his money, Bluetrick knows he can't afford to say no. He allows Steven Sergio, the son of alleged Gambino kingpin Michael Sergio, to enforce the place.
This was not a bully thing. This was a mutual business arrangement between me and Michael. And it worked out perfectly. It really did.
And Steven Sergio is happy to be on the take.
Well, I mean, it started out slow. It started out with $1,000 a week. The deal that I made with him was an unbelievable deal for him, because if it hadn't been me, it would have been somebody else that probably wouldn't have been nowhere near as nice to Michael Bluetrick as I was.
And Scores is nice to Steven Sergio. He's shaking down everyone on the payroll, from the dancers to the DJs, right down to the busboys and janitors. Steven says his weekly take-home balloons to 50 grand a week.
You have to understand, no one knew how much money was going out. So if you want to call that extortion, I think it's more entrepreneurish than extortion.
Whatever you call it, it went all the way to the top. Even acting Gambino boss John Gotti Jr. is allegedly getting a piece of the action.
Everybody
was getting rich at Scores,
including the mob.
including the mob.
Blue Trick is in deep with organized crime, but his fall would really begin years earlier in an unrelated scheme, far from the glamour and grit of New York.
The Florida
real
fraud case was
Florida
the
fraud
beginning of
case
the
was
end.
the beginning of the end.
Before Scores had even opened, Blue Trick's business associate Shalom Weiss wanted to buy an Orlando insurance company, but he was a little shy on cash.
I still can't believe I did it, but they had a plan. And the plan was that both the sellers and the buyers and the insurance company all had accounts in the same bank.
Blue Trick brokered a deal. Weiss would borrow money from the insurance company to buy the insurance company.
That's fraud.
Yes, because we used the insurance company money to buy the insurance company. And it created a great deal of problems.
That's putting it mildly. His friend Shalom Weiss goes on to loot the insurance company of a record-breaking $440 million. When he's later convicted, Weiss's sentence is just as staggering, 835 years in prison. Current projected release date, November 23rd of 2754. Blue Trick's involvement in that older scheme was coming back to haunt him.
I faced time, and we had a very angry prosecutor.
But the feds would offer the mild-mannered lawyer a lifeline.
If we would agree to cooperate and, get these people who had been extorting us at Scores, they could give us a 99.9% promise that we would never see the inside of a jail cell.
You became an FBI informant.
Yes, I became an FBI informant.
And put him point blank with a family notorious for extortion, assault, and murder.
How close did you come to being found out?
As close as any human being can come.
Michael Blue Trick Scores is a high-end strip club with a low-down problem. There are no rats in the kitchen, but plenty in the back office.
Anybody want like a cognac or something?
How deeply did the mob infiltrate Scores?
Well, it was sort of like once I let the fox in the door, it was hard to keep track.
But Mob Task Force federal prosecutor Art Leach says an unrelated $500 million scheme put Michael Blue Trick in even deeper trouble.
Michael was accused of putting together a shady financial deal to purchase an insurance company in Florida.
Yes, he in fact did that. But then it cascaded out of control, and millions and millions of dollars of assets were removed from the company.
Blue Trick's in hot water and deep, but the feds offer Blue Trick a parachute.
When the government came along and said, there is one path for you in your life to redemption, I took it.
Here's the path. If Blue Trick wants to save his skin, he'll have to go undercover at his own club and roll secret tape on the Gambinos, one of the most notorious crime families in history.
You wore a wire.
I wore a wire over the course of a year, and I taped 110 conversations.
110 conversations.
Yes.
With mobsters.
Yes.
It's risky.
If they had found the body wire on him, they would have killed him in his place,
He would have been killed
right there,
had he been outed.
no question.
The time is approximately 7:12 p.m. The purpose of this recording is to capture conversations of Michael Blue Trick and Michael Sergio.
In 1,000 hours of secret surveillance, Blue Trick sweats bullets. Here in the back office of Scores, catching mobsters taking payoffs. And just listen as this known associate of the Gambino family brags about a brutal beatdown.
I beat him so bad, bangs in his head, everything was blood everywhere.
We had films of them coming in and taking their weekly draws, the mafia. We had conversations taped where murder conspiracies were developed. We had every crime you could think of, from money laundering to assault to all of it captured on film.
Blue Trick knows any misstep, without a doubt, would get him whacked.
How tense was that?
I think I suffered a psychotic break during it. I really do.
The low-key lawyer should be worried. Mob enforcer Steven Sergio, whom you can clearly see in the surveillance video, says the wise guys are starting to get wiser.
I tried to warn them all. They went right ahead and walked right into the trap. All everybody had to do was keep their mouth shut.
But they don't. And Blutrick goes on to catch one more bombshell bit of family business. A tale of extortion that goes all the way to the top.
They're after John Gotti. They're after Junior Gotti. That's the marquee name on top of the indictment.
And Michael Blutrick got the whole scheme on tape.
They extorted, initially they went after $200,000 from the owners of Scores. It was eventually reduced to $100,000, and that extortion was paid.
It was from one hand to another hand to another hand to Junior.
John Gotti Jr., essentially.
$100,000. One-time payoff.
This single recording cooks the Gambino's goose, putting wise guy after wise guy behind bars, including mob boss John Gotti Jr.
You helped bring down several key members of
Yes.
the Gambino crime family.
And other families, yeah.
A lot of mobsters.
A lot of mobsters.
If you did not have Michael Blutrick, all of those prosecutions would not have happened. You know, it's one thing to be able to prosecute low-level mafia people, associates, and perhaps a soldier or two, but this case went into the highest reaches of the Gambino crime family.
So Blutrick putting himself in Gotti's crosshairs should get him off the hook with the Florida State's Attorney's Office, right? Nope.
We got zero consideration for the New York cooperation. We wound up with Good Time serving 13 plus years.
Did the government back out on its promise?
100%.
Even so, Blutrick says prison time didn't keep him from making good on the Florida scheme.
I have spent 17 years now cooperating to recover that money. One of the proudest things I can say is that everybody got their money back, and I got the people who paid them all their money back.
Michael Blutrick may have paid his debts in Florida, but what about his New York friends, ones who might to this day be carrying a grudge? He lives in fear of that every day.
Is your life in danger today, as we sit here?
I'm defenseless. I mean, I'm not a tough guy. I mean, if somebody wants to come after me, they'll get me.
And he's hiding in plain sight. Blutrick is no longer in the witness protection program. He says he's already forfeited 13 years in prison. He's not going to forfeit the rest of his life being scared. The former strip club king also just wrote a new book called Scores, where he reveals even more about his rise and fall here in New York City.